Red Bull's new era is off to a dramatic start at Formula One's first 2026 pre-season test, catching the eye of rivals, surprising itself with its new engine, and suffering a big shunt at the end of the second day. Newly promoted driver Hadjar brought a very promising couple of days to a premature end at Barcelona with a high-speed shunt at the final corner. Red Bull and Ferrari were the only teams to brave a mixed weather forecast and run on day 2, with teams only allowed to run on 3 of the 5 days in total. But after a solid morning with Max Verstappen at the wheel, Hadjar's afternoon ended when his RB22 went into the barriers at the final corner in wet conditions. You'd imagine that's driver error given that's a tricky corner in the wet, but right now we can't say for sure. Barcelona is the first proper test of Red Bull becoming a full works team and building its own F1 power unit, a crazy choice by its own admission. And yet despite Hadjar's shunts, it has started 2026 very strongly. Red Bull was one of 7 teams to run on the first day of testing, and before Hadjar crashed, had been racking up mileage comparable to established power unit manufacturers Mercedes and Ferrari. In fact, it was the only team to run on both Monday and Tuesday, exceeding its mileage targets. The weather forecast did put some teams off running on Tuesday, but the fact that Verstappen was straight out on track on Tuesday morning was evidence of a confident start, even if a brief off at turn 5, which Verstappen quickly recovered from, probably wasn't part of the plan. Barcelona is only the first of 3 pre-season tests, so there's a long way to go until Melbourne, but the difference between Red Bull and F1's other new power unit manufacturer Audi is night and day. For example, on day 1, Red Bull completed just shy of 4 times the number of laps Audi managed, with Hadjar's 107 laps, the equivalent of around 1.7 race distances at the Spanish Grand Prix. Audi encountered a couple of problems in the morning which ruined the rest of its first day of testing, something Red Bull avoided. Plus, Red Bull's sister Racing Bull's team clocked 88 laps, the second most of the 4 customer teams on Monday. And while it did stop on track with one precautionary systems shutdown during a practice start, Mercedes customer Alpine also caused a red flag. And Racing Bull's driver Liam Lawson called the issues safety precautions rather than actual issues, and said honestly on the power unit side it has been very good. The team already clocked 200 kilometers of running at Imola last week too, so the first Red Bull F1 power unit has survived plenty of strain. And don't forget Red Bull's former engine partner Honda, effectively a new engine manufacturer having pulled out of F1 at the end of 2021, is yet to surface at Barcelona as a new Aston Martin isn't ready yet and won't appear until Thursday at the earliest. It's not just impressive reliability either. Red Bull is delivering performance, with Hadjar topping Monday's running and Verstappen sat on top of the timesheets for much of a damp Tuesday. Yes, we know it's only testing, but rivals are already taking notice, with one of the 2026 preseason favourites, George Russell, saying he was pretty impressed with a number of other teams, including Red Bull. And it's not just the new power unit catching the eye either. Once the real RB 2022 finally broke cover, we could compare it to the 2026 concept show car Red Bull revealed to us during its Detroit launch event in the middle of January, and there are a couple of interesting design features that actually hark back to past eras of F1. It probably won't surprise you to learn there are many subtle but important differences between Red Bull's 2026 concept car and its actual interpretation of the new rules. The nose is flatter and shorter, with narrower pylons connecting it to a rounder front wing mainplane that features reshaped end plates. The real Red Bull has the Mercedes-style triple-element barge board at the front of the floor, the edge of which is also curled up, a la Ferrari, to create an extra element there for airflow control. There's also significant differences in the side pod and engine cover packaging. Compared to the concept, the real Red Bull has much larger openings at the airbox at side pod inlets, but tighter packaging within the side pod itself. This packaging looks fairly aggressive, which is encouraging to see considering Red Bull is a brand new engine manufacturer. The difference compared to say Audi is astronomical in terms of how confident each team looks regarding their new car's engine heat rejection characteristics. But our resident F1 technical expert Gary Anderson wouldn't quite go as far to label the Red Bull's skinny side pod a Zeropod like the Mercedes design that appeared for the start of the ground effect era, saying it is similar in size and concept to the other cars we have seen so far. But it's not a million miles away, and it's clear the Red Bull also has a significant amount of exposed floor area, which means, like Mercedes, it must be confident of using more of the airflow than for downforce generation rather than wasting it on cooling the power unit. Gary Anderson thinks Red Bull, like Mercedes and Ferrari, has gone to town on the bargeboard area, but says it's curious to see these designs, supported by two stays to maintain their rigidity under load, go against the FIA's intention to prevent the so-called outwashing of air within these new regulations. Another intriguing detail on the Red Bull floor, which is also present on the Mercedes, is a cutout in the sides of the diffuser, slightly inboard of the rear tyre. It wasn't immediately obvious from the limited Mercedes Silverstone shakedown imagery whether this was a real design detail or a simple piece of tape, but seeing the RB22 out in the wild alongside more of the W17 confirms there is a significant cutout in this area of the floor. It may be that Red Bull doesn't have a side in the diffuser in that area going rearwards, and so is using the turning vane situated just ahead of the rear brake duct to help pull airflow through the diffuser. This airflow is known as tyre squirt because of the way the wheel's rotation energizes it. It is fairly high energy flow, and if you can manage it and contain it, then it could very easily improve the performance of the diffuser. Gary Anderson reckons you could even call this a modern version of the blown diffusers that have appeared periodically through the 1980s, 90s, and 2010s, most recently during Sebastian Vettel's dominant championship runs with V8 powered Red Bull Renaults between 2010 and 2013. He says that this section of the floor is using high energy flow to optimize lower energy flow in an area that will create downforce, and that is exactly what blown diffusers did. In F1's V8 era, Red Bull and Renault were undoubtedly the class of the field when it came to maximizing the potential of blown diffusers. Perhaps that's a good omen for Red Bull's first year as a go-it-alone F1 works team. If you want to know more about Red Bull's strong start to 2026, head to the Race Members Club to hear from John Noble and Ed Straw, who are on the ground at Barcelona. Now's the perfect time to grab your paddock pass to go behind the scenes of this F1 season by claiming your free 7-day trial. Find the link below or click on screen now. Red Bull has been very confident in the new powertrains company's capacity to produce a respectable, competitive engine at the first attempt, but has played down how likely it is that it can rival the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari straight out of the blocks. Team boss Laurent Mekies predicted engine struggles for the first few months of 2026 back at the team's launch 2 weeks ago, but Red Bull has exceeded its own expectations at Barcelona already, including a glowing review from Hadjar before a shunt, and says it doesn't feel that much different to what he's used to on all the upshifts and downshifts, despite these being very different engines with a much more powerful MGU-K and no MGU-H. As we said earlier, we don't yet know how much driver error factored into Hadjar's shunts. If it was, he's already proven himself capable of bouncing back strongly, as a stunning rookie F1 season started with Hadjar crashing on the formation lap in Melbourne. But Red Bull won't want a repeat of 2019, where Pierre Gasly's confidence was knocked by a couple of big pre-season testing shunts and never recovered. But second driver question aside, there's some optimism that lead driver Verstappen won't be unjustly stuck in F1's midfield this year with a hopelessly unreliable or underpowered engine. Of course, Mercedes has been seriously impressive too. Not 2014 levels, but ominously serene nonetheless. Plus, Ferrari made a decent start on Tuesday, and we haven't seen the McLaren or Aston Martin on track yet to know their potential. So it's far too early to declare Red Bull as any kind of pre-season favourite or even a frontrunner. But given the risk taken in building a brand new power unit for the very first time within arguably F1's most complicated set of engine rules ever, Red Bull has made a strong, if dramatic, start to 2026.